Hey guys, how's everyone doing? Great, that's awesome. It's really good to be here this morning. Speaking to you, I just have a quick point I want to make. One of the things I've learned in my time here is that some of the words you say or some of the things you do don't really mean the same thing in different contexts. Have you noticed that? Like you have this inside joke with somebody and then you take it to a different context and nobody gets it. It doesn't mean the same thing at all. If you've ever traveled overseas, you are very familiar with this concept as well. If you've been to one of the international programs or gone on a mission trip to another country, you quickly realize that there are some things you just shouldn't say, or some hand signals you shouldn't give, or some things that you just absolutely should not do. During the fall of 2008, my wife and I were able to spend the semester in Greece with many of our close friends. Those of you who are out there, you know. And it was by far the best 3 months of my life. But we had to learn some lessons about what not to say. The words we use in the U.S. do not always have the same connotation as in other places. For instance, we were in Greek class with Vicky Tsakou, the most genuine, sweetest person you will ever meet. And those of you who've been to Hug, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Sweet lady, great person. And those of you going in about a month, give her the biggest hug for me, please. But anyway, we were in Greek class. And somehow we got on the topic of terms of endearment. And she was explaining to us how in Greece they say, kardiamou, which is my heart, or agapimou, which is my love. Someone brought up how we in America use the term honey when describing our loved one. And to which she replied, I would not call someone honey because honey is brown and sticky. To her, honey had the connotation of something that is dirty looking and kind of messy. So she wouldn't call a loved one honey. Just something we don't think about here. There were other things that we were not allowed to say while in Greece. For instance, we couldn't even say the name of one of our classmates. His name was Heston, which in Greek is something so bad that they wouldn't even tell us what it meant. So we had to call him Easton the entire time, and some of us would forget and yell out, "Hey, Heston!" right in the middle of the big shopping area there and get some really strange looks. There's also a key difference between asking in Greek, how much does it cost, and how much do you cost? One letter makes the difference. One letter. Don't get that wrong. It's just a different culture. Different words mean different things, and different signals can get you in a lot of trouble depending on where you are. So what I want to ask you today is what comes to mind when I say the word Christian? When I say the word Christian, what are the first things you think of? Asking that in this context, in this room, probably get a lot more positive results than you would out in the rest of society, out in the rest of American culture. For instance, Dan Kimball's book, They Like Jesus But Hate the Church, explores what American culture has to say about Christianity and why they think certain things about us. It says, society views the church as judgmental, hypocritical, homophobic, right-wing conservatives pushing their own political agenda and forcing morality on others. I'm sure that description does not fit most of you in this room, but I have met a few people in my lifetime who purposefully try and be that type of person. But the reality is that the church is full of imperfect people. It's a hospital for sinners, not a museum for saints, as some have said. One thing that comes to mind when I think about this is the YouTube videos. I don't know, some of you might have seen them. There's a series of YouTube videos that this church did called Christ Follower versus Christian. And they're sort of a parody of the Mac versus PC commercials. And the Christian, who's supposed to be the PC guy, is wearing the suit and just reinforcing these stereotypes that we see. They're making the push for Christ follower rather than Christian, because Christian has such a negative connotation. But what does it mean to be a Christian? I think this is the very issue that Paul is talking about in his letter to the church in Galatia. If you read through the letter of Galatians, it's a very harsh letter. Paul uses some very strong language in there to address the Galatians because they just haven't got it figured out. Like many of you in here, they were struggling with what it means to be a Christian. For the Jews, they were struggling with, well, to be a follower of Christ, do I have to keep the entire law? Do I have to be circumcised? Do I have to keep the food laws? Do I have to do X, Y, and Z? For the Gentiles over here, they were like, well, to be a Christ follower, I'm told that I have freedom in Christ, so I don't have to do any of that stuff. And morality doesn't matter, and what I do in my own spare time doesn't matter as long as I profess the name of Christ. Paul says, no, you have not got it figured out. You are completely wrong. And so through the whole discussion, he's bashing both sides for not getting it, for not understanding what it means to be a Christian. And finally, in chapter 5, verse 6 of Galatians, he says, "For in Christ Jesus, neither circumcision nor uncircumcision count for anything, but only faith working through love." To be a Christian has nothing to do with circumcision or uncircumcision, the law or not keeping the law. If you're asking that question, you're asking the wrong question. He says what really matters is faith working through love. Faith in God, love for the world, and action, service for others. Putting that faith, that love into action. Sounds very familiar with the words of Micah to the people of Israel, Micah 6:8. He says, "He has shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? But to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God." So what does it mean to be a Christian? Are we just reinforcing the stereotype of being judgmental, hypocritical, homophobic, and all these horrible things? Or are we helping to redefine Christianity back to its intended purpose of a people of faith, a people of love, and a people of service? So that's my encouragement to you today. If anybody looks at you and thinks those things, then something's wrong. Please, make a change. Don't reinforce that stereotype any longer. Really embrace what it means to be a Christian. Faith working through love.